Coming to you from somewhere off planet, from the ether and into your ethernet. We are now in the twilight of retrograde, and it's now time for the Zodcast. Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Zodcast. I moved it up to 8 o'clock Central Time. It works a little better for me. So, hope that doesn't squeeze anyone out too much. If it does, you can always, of course, watch this later. Hey, Pedro, how are you doing? Hey, everybody, say hello to Patty, our great gatekeeper and moderator of the Zodcast. Hey, Darnell, glad you made it this time. There's your shout out, but I'll remember to give you one later. Hey, Chris, good seeing everybody in the live chat, a lot of the regulars. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Mark. Pedro, I don't know. Email me. Email me the question. I definitely like to get, hey, Kettlehead, definitely email it to me. Hey, Red Feather, and I'll get it to him. Hey, Stefan. Hope everybody's doing well. Saw where Suzanne Summers passed away. That was um, sorry to see that where she passed away. She had a long battle with cancer, and I knew she was sick, but I didn't know that she was uh, gravely ill. But man, now there's two of the original cast members of Three's Company are now gone. Of course, John Ritter, the great John Ritter, and now Suzanne Summers passes away. I guess it was sometime early evening. So definitely rest in peace to Suzanne Summers. Big fan of Three's Company, of course. That dates me, but I think a few of you out there around my age or maybe a little older. So it's good company there at least. So let me get into it. I've been continuing to read Shooting Zodiac. Of course, let me know how the audio is doing. We had some problems last time. I think it was because I was playing music, and every time I do that, it screws up the audio. But didn't do it this time, as you see. So hopefully the audio is okay. I think that's right, Lisa. I forgot that Suzanne Summers was a close friend of Forrest Finn. I think I recalled that seeing that, and I'm sure you know, being a big Finster. Um, yeah, I think she was a good person. I really do. Okay, thanks, Patty. Thanks for letting me know. So, go back to the poll results. Can't speak. Back to the poll results from the last poll on the community group. Let me pull it up. I was going to do it straight from here, but it was close. It turned out to be closer than I thought. I originally thought it was going to get be a really lopsided vote, and of course, I'm on the losing side of this, but it was actually almost an even vote. So, of course, the question was, do you think the voyeur that was eyeing the three sunbathing college students at Lake Berryessa was also the Zodiac killer? The yes vote was 54%. People that believe the voyeur was also the Zodiac. And the no, the voyeur was not Zodiac vote was 46%. So pretty close, 54 to 46%. 35 people voted in that. So it's almost 50-50. I really thought that the people that thought it was the voyeur was Zodiac was going to be a lot higher number, but it wasn't. But I'm still on that lower number side. I just don't think it was. Hey, Keith, how are you? Glad Keith stopped by. And definitely go check out Keith's channel, Life After Life Paranormal. Keith is closing in on 2,000 subscribers. So go check his channel out. Go check out the last show because Keith had me on and I told my ghost story and I told my UFO story. So go check that out over on Keith's channel at Life After Life Paranormal. Just if you just click on him in the live chat, it will take you there, and you can see me do a good rendition of my one and only great ghost story, my one and only great UFO story over there with Keith and Garrett. Enjoyed coming on there. Always enjoyed coming on with Keith. And Keith knows the Zodiac case really well. I'm gonna have to have him on here sometime and have him on the Zodcast and talk some Zodiac stuff. I think that Keith there was still my favorite show I've ever been on, talking Zodiac because he knew it so well and knew all the right questions to ask. But the main focus of this, thanks, Keith, will be more reading of Shooting Zodiac by Robert Graysmith. And thanks to Neil Arnold again for telling me to go read that book. I mean, of course, I've read, Zodiac, I've seen the movie, everything. And I should have gotten that book sooner than I did, but I finally got around to reading it. I'm still not done. It's pretty long. I don't know how many pages are in it, but I've got the Kindle version just flipping through Shooting Zodiac, but there's so many good nuggets in there. And of course, mind you, it's Robert Graysmith, and he knows how to bend the truth or do some gray smithing, as I like to call it. And his book Zodiac, and of course Zodiac Unmasked. But Zodiac's a book that started it all. It's what shaped the case that we have it as we know it today. And of course, it mostly focuses on Arthur Lee Allen as the Zodiac Killer, and that's how we know it. And why do we have Arthur Lee Allen as a suspect? Because of Don Cheney. Without Don Cheney, you have a much different Zodiac case. It's still going to be popular. You still had the name and the ciphers, but when it was a major motion picture and the book that was a bestseller, that really shifted gears in this case, and it brought it more popularity than it would have otherwise. I think was all because of Don Cheney's accusation. So going over some of the things that, well, first I want to read, because we always talk about all things that happened in the documentary. His name is Arthur Lee Allen. Of course, that's what started it for me. It started this whole odyssey. And of course, his name was Arthur Lee Allen. Starts out with the story from Ralph Spinelli, and Spinelli's talking about this fight he got into with Arthur Lee Allen at his house back in the 50s. And they talk a lot about that in this book, Shooting Zodiac. Of course, this is Robert Graysmith's version of events when they were making the movie, the David Fincher film Zodiac, based off his book Zodiac. And Fincher getting on board. It talks a lot about Fincher and his assistant and people like that, trying to get people to participate. And it's really David Fincher trying to assure himself that he's doing right by the facts. So he wants to talk to people and make sure all this is true. And then he did it in a good way where he's not absolutely hammering that this has to be Arthur Lee Allen. But of course, the book's about mostly about Arthur Lee Allen being the Zodiac. So he couldn't change it a whole lot. So this is a lot of him. Like I mentioned before, he was hung up on some things that Cheney said that he wanted to get right about when he went to Pomona Police and all that. And of course, we talked about that a whole lot. Well, let me switch gears. I want to, since this page came up, and I've the pages in front of me from this book, but I always go back to circumstantial evidence for Arthur Lee Allen, because nobody can still compete with that. After over 50 years in this case, you cannot throw out a suspect that's going to come near Arthur Lee Allen on circumstantial evidence. You can't. Here's a list of it here. It's a typed list that I've got. I don't even remember where this particular one came from, but it's got the case file up there. And this is 12 points, and I think there's actually more. There's 12 that would just mind blowing for Allen. I mean, that you cannot just say this is just coincidence. Yes, coincidences happen all the time, but here's 12 right here that just blow you away. I mean, it talks about Allen. I don't think Sherry Joe Bates was Zodiac, but it talks about Allen missing that day. The roll typewriter, of course. Talks about Allen having the Zodiac model wristwatch that he got for Christmas 1967, and it gets that date right here. Of course, it gets it before Don Cheney tries to move that date a year, but it talks about Arthur Lee Allen having the Zodiac watch and getting it for Christmas 67, which is way before Lake Herman Road. And that's another thing they go back and forth about in Shooting Zodiac is, how dare, you have this picture of Arthur Lee Allen later when he's on one of the news channels. I think it's one of the local or a Bay Area news crew that films Allen, where he's crying and he's saying, "I'm not the Zodiac," and all this kind of stuff. And he's bawling. Like he cannot take it anymore. Like maybe in the beginning, he liked the attention of being considered the Zodiac Killer and what came with it. But then later on, he just got burned out on it. It was too much for him. And what they're saying in this book, then why wouldn't you take the watch off, Lee? Because he always wore that Zodiac watch. I think up until his death, he wore that wristwatch. I think the police confiscated it after his death, if I'm not wrong about that. But that's a good point. If he's sick of being considered the Zodiac, called the Zodiac, this terrible killer, which most people were cool with, and the locals in Vallejo, they all knew he was being looked at. Of course, they've seen the news go over to his house at 32 Fresno and probably over to his trailer in Santa Rosa. But it was a good point. If you hated that attention at that point in your life, when I'm talking about the late 80s and the early 90s, of course, the Graysmith's book came out in 86. Why not take the watch off? He wouldn't. He would not take that watch off. And of course, he didn't like his own mother. His mother did everything for him. Arthur Lee Allen hated his mother. It's true, for whatever reason. And his mother gave him the watch. So it wasn't something sentimental about his own mother that was doing that. But I thought it was a great point they made about the watch. Like, you're crying and you can't take it anymore, but yet you're still wearing the watch. So a good point that they make there. Okay, this is okay. Of course, I'm going back to his name was Arthur Lee Allen, and as you know, that whole documentary starts with Ralph Spinelli. And let me put Spinelli's picture up here. This is going to be a later picture of course, that's Allen. Um, that's Ralph Spinelli there in the picture, the top left. That's a little later in life before he passed away. He had cancer. So, real avid golfer. He got to meet Jack Nicklaus, and he wrote a book about helping prisoners. Of course, he spent a lot of time in jail for armed robberies, and we'll probably touch on that again. But this is good because it kind of explains a little bit better that story, but the story still doesn't make sense. Where he says that he was dancing with a girl at a party, and later went home to his house, and the girl's boyfriend showed up, and they got in this massive brawl in Spinelli's little apartment at his home where he lived, or upstairs apartment, a garage apartment, or something like that. And then he's in this massive fight with this other guy, and then Allen shows up. Arthur Lee Allen shows up out of nowhere, and they're like the door implodes or something like that. And that's where the story ends in the video. We don't know anything else about this incident. Like, why was Allen going to defend this guy? Was Allen? It never says was Allen friends with this man that was dating the girl that Spinelli danced with. There's nothing about it. But this is where Graysmith is talking about in this book, and it says it was 4 a.m. the summer of 1958 when I first met Lee Allen. This is Spinelli talking. I was asleep in a small detached room at the rear of my father's house on Manzita Street in Vallejo when a knock sounded at my door. Still in my boxer shorts, I opened up to see some guy I barely knew. The teenage intruder leapt into the room, slammed the door behind, and within seconds they were battling. Okay, this is Graysmith writing. Was battling. Ralph, a 190-pound football player, was very strong in those days and got his attacker down on his knees. The teenager grabbed Spinelli by the balls, literally, and was holding on for dear life when the door imploded in the center. And a huge man burst into the room. This was a heavy door, no lightweight thing, Spinelli said. He hit it hard. I figured he was a friend of the guy I was tussling with, which was the case. He wasn't at the party I had just left, so they must have been friends. He must have got him and said, I've got a guy. I've got to go beat the shit out of him. Come on, I want you to help me. The fact that he obviously hit the door with his shoulder and was coming in behind it saved my bacon. He stumbled in. The stranger was carrying a huge hunting knife, and the fight suddenly got serious. It was clear to me he was on a mission and this man was possessed. My instinct told me this guy is not in touch with his immortal soul. He has no contact with it at all. This man doesn't care. I could see that in his face. It's lights out for him now. It doesn't matter. He was putting it all on the line. That's a very dangerous type of person. I've often thought I may be the luckiest guy and that he hit the door with his shoulder and fell into it. If it had been me, I would have stood back and kicked the door. Spinelli Spinelli snatched his baseball bat from the corner. I cracked him with it. The bat hit him in the front of the forehead. Spinelli made a quick diagonal slice with his hand across his left eye to show the exact spot. I would have continued to hit him if it were necessary, but by that time, my father was out there and everything was under control. The cops had got there and said, this is Ralph Spinelli Jr. and Ralph Spinelli Sr., but who the F is Lee Allen? Who gives a shit? All we knew was we didn't need this kind of grief. It turned out that Allen was arrested, taken into custody, and as I understand, later discharged from the Navy because of this. Too bad he got so stupid. It wasn't any of his business. His mother asked my father not to press charges. Dad said, I don't want to press charges, so we didn't press charges. Now, because we didn't press charges, Allen thought we were great guys. So I don't know what to make of that whole story. I don't know if it's true or not. I really don't believe the whole story about Allen visiting Ralph Spinelli at the Crazy Horse Saloon and volunteering his services as a hitman. I never believed multiple armed robbery charges, and this was in 1990. Of course, Allen dies in 1992. But somehow the name Arthur Lee Allen got leaked to Spinelli about him, that fact that Allen was being looked at as the Zodiac Killer. So Spinelli was just trying to leverage that information somehow to give that name up. Of course, Bauer, and this talks about it a lot in the book, Bauer goes and interviews Spinelli like we're talking about there and trying to get to the truth. And of course, they don't want to make a deal. They're like, nah, we don't know if we believe you or not. And long story short, They don't make a deal. Spinelli gets convicted and later gives up the name Arthur Lee Allen. That's how that whole piece from his name with Arthur Lee Allen comes about. So I just don't even really believe that story that I just read. Something did happen at Spinelli's house, but the facts are not all there for whatever reason. Because if you're Arthur Lee Allen and you're the Zodiac, because he has to, you have to agree, he has to be the Zodiac if Spinelli's telling the truth. Because if Spinelli's telling the truth, Allen came and said, I want to go, I'll go kill for you. And Spinelli kicks him out of the office. And then Paul Stein is murdered. And then Allen comes back to Spinelli and says, do you believe me now? Meaning he's claiming the Stein killing. So that can't just be a coincidence. So if you believe Spinelli, then Allen is the Zodiac. If you believe Cheney-Allen is the Zodiac. Problem is, I don't believe Cheney and I don't believe Spinelli. I think Spinelli cleaned up his life later on, but he just was too embarrassed to ever go back and say he made it up. I think he just got wind of it, of them. He's a Vallejo local. He got wind. I mean, it was probably no huge secret at that point, even though Graysmith used Robert Hall Starr as a pseudonym from Arthur Lee Allen. I don't think that it was a well-kept secret. And another thing that the book talks about a lot is the whole issue of whether or not that an arrest of Arthur Lee Allen was imminent. I'm told from back channels that it was, that they were going to arrest Arthur Lee Allen specifically for the attack at Blue Rock Springs Park. And when you read all this stuff, there gives you a lot more detail than you've seen before, because I've read before on Michael Butterfield's side that the DA that would have presided over Allen's arrest and the trial was the DA's name was Mike Nail, Nail, and Mike Nail had made the comment, no, we were not, the arrest of Allen was not imminent. We just didn't have anything concrete. We had done a search of his home and found some weapons and some pipe bomb materials, but nothing linking him to the Zodiac Killer. Of course, the handwriting didn't match and the forensics matched. So we really had nothing. But the people under him, including George Bauer, were of course convinced that Allen was Zodiac. Bauer says in the book that he's 95% at one point that he felt Allen was the Zodiac. And then looking into it more, he gets up to like 99%. So Bauer's really pushing for this, some kind of arrest of Allen, trying to bring him down on circumstantial evidence. And a lot of this was being led by a guy named Jim Lang, who was picked by Mike Nail, the DA, to follow up on all things Arthur Lee Allen. And what it makes clear in the book, at least if you believe Graysmith going through all this, is that one reason they didn't move on Allen is because they knew his death was imminent. He was in such bad health. He was on dialysis. His kidneys were failing. He had all kind of horrible diabetes. He had already lost a ton of weight. I think by 1990, he dies in 92, but he's already really frail by 90, 91. It's clear that he's going to die pretty soon. And that was one of the reasons they didn't want to go through all the, I think they may have even had some sympathy for Allen at the time, and it makes that pretty clear. So that was one reason that they claimed they didn't move on Allen, was because they knew he was going to die. So what's the point of putting him for prison for the rest of his life? Because he's not going to make it another year, according to them. And another thing was, he was not a threat at large anymore. He was in such bad health at that point. Who's he going to kill? I mean, he could barely get around. He's on dialysis, he's got diabetes. He's not hardly getting around at all, moving at all. So that was one of the things. And then another thing was that Mike Nail, the DA that would have presided over this, wanted a judgeship, and that was important to him. So he did not want to risk putting Allen on trial and spending the money, which I think they said would have cost somewhere around $1 million to put Allen on trial. And remember, without anything concrete as far as evidence, all circumstantial, but that's not exactly a bad thing. Many people have been convicted on circumstantial evidence, especially before the advent of DNA, where they, even in cases where they had no fingerprints, all they had was maybe some witnesses, or maybe you get Mike Michaud to show up and say, that's him, Your Honor, and that's all they need. With all the other stuff going on for Allen, maybe he gets convicted. But I thought it was interesting that Mike Nail wanted a judgeship. They said it was a ton of politics involved with whether or not they were going to bring Allen to trial or arrest him for Blue Rock Springs. I'm assuming, because somebody else told me it would have been definitely for Blue Rock Springs, not for any other Zodiac attack. They were focusing on Blue Rock Springs. There was a lot of talk. Did Arthur Lee Allen know Darlene Ferrin? And they said that no one could prove that he did or not, but you think they could have found that out, because Allen definitely went to the IHOP a lot that was literally out his front door, the one in Vallejo, which I've been to. This, was where she worked for a long time, where Alan lived at that residence for years. He grew up there, and he absolutely knew her. And it also made this, and I've never seen this from another source, that the reason Darlene left working at the IHOP to go work at Terry's Waffle House that was further away. I don't know how many miles, because Terry's is not there anymore. But that's the reason she left the IHOP, was because Alan was bothering her. And I don't know why no one ever followed up or got anyone to say that that's what happened. I think that Dean Farron was still working at the IHOP. So did he testify? Yeah, we remember creepy Alan coming in here, because the only word you have of Alan knowing Darlene is Don Cheney. And we cannot take Cheney's word for anything, unfortunately, but there's no way that he didn't know her on some level. So there's a lot of talk about that, which I'll read part of that too soon. And there's just a treasure trove of good stuff in here. And now let me move to this picture. This is actually that's Darlene Farron on the right, holding her at the time baby. It was still a baby at the time of her murder, and that's her daughter grown up right there in the middle with her two children. So that's a good picture. You know, life goes on, and uh fortunately the baby survived, but that's her daughter in the middle. You can tell she looks like Darlene. So does her daughter. Actually, her daughter looks a little like her as well, but her daughter really looks like her. So this is Ron Allen up here. That's Robert Graysmith. Of course, Arthur Lee Allen. That's a younger picture of Arthur Lee Allen. Remember, Arthur Lee Allen was a great athlete. He was a standout diver. He'd won state at in junior college. I think it was Vallejo Junior College, and then he was also one something really high up with his trampoline skills. He could do flips, backflips on the trampoline. And he didn't look that bad there. He was not a creepy child molester all his years. That's why people see that and can't even believe that that's Arthur Lee Allen. Here's more on that, what I was just talking about earlier. Let me take this off. They're talking to Detective Conway said, absolutely, Conway said, suddenly animated. He laid down his menu and leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. It was Jim Lang who had that conversation about pursuing the case, talking about bringing Allen in. He was second in command in the Vallejo DA's office, and he had pushed the case for filing it. Would have been filed, but there was no practical reason to pursue this because if Allen was going to die shortly, there is still all the stuff we would have to gear up because it was a death penalty case. Where is Jim Lang? He is in the grave. Conway and Bauer says because he could talk their lingo. Whenever the two, this is why they brought Lang in. Whenever the two detectives went off on a tangent, Lang would say, slow down here. Do we have a problem? Fincher asked, because Fincher's interviewing all these guys. If we have a scene in the movie where somebody says he's going to be dead in 6 months, we're not spending the amount of money that it takes to get a grand jury and get everybody hooked up. That's major paraphrasing, but what do I care? Conway said. He shrugged. My import doesn't have any meaning one way or the other. So David Fincher was really wanting a scene in the movie where they're going to move on Allen. And the reason why they're not going to move on Allen was because he was going to die in 6 months. So David Fincher meeting all these people is already kind of mapping out how the movie's going to go. And that's one of the things he wanted. I don't think that ever got in the movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't remember it, but he absolutely wanted somebody to in the movie making that statement that, why make a move on Allen to arrest him if he's going to be dead in 6 months was important. I don't think it ever made it into the movie. Go back here. And then it talks again about they were all discussing, this is everybody making the movie. Of course, the main people are David Fincher, talking to the detectives like Bauer, and they're talking about Arthur Lee Allen getting the traffic ticket in San Francisco. Of course, it was the first Zodiac letter not mailed from the city of San Francisco on the same day that Arthur Allen gets this speeding ticket in the city. And then we all know the letter winds up getting mailed the same day from Pleasanton, California. So that's what this piece is talking about here. It says, Allen got a traffic ticket in San Francisco on March 13th, 1971. Brad asked. Really, Bowert said. Arthur Lee Allen got a ticket in San Francisco on the day one of the Zodiac's letters was mailed? You know who got the ticket from, Brad said. No, who? You. No kidding. I don't think anybody put that in the report. I probably looked at this thing, didn't look at the date, and thought, oh, there's an old ticket, and this is an SFPD ticket. Brad had tried to make out the name of the officer who issued the ticket, but it was indecipherable scrawl. It looks to me, he continued, as if Zodiac had been in the habit of dropping his I think I missed this part. Okay, wait. Then I thought to myself, oh no, this is never mind. I just screwed that part up on the other page. But anyway, they're discussing the speeding ticket that Allen got in the city, and then the other one, of course, Fincher's all over that. And then he asked Bowert a crucial question. Do you think Zodiac was Lee Allen? He asked. Oh, hell yeah, Bowert said without missing a beat. His eyes lit up. The barber chair kicked up. I'm 95 to 99% sure he did it. There are so many coincidences. I think Lee was very lucky, as we're just discovering. Did you know that Arthur Lee Allen got a ticket in San Francisco on March 13, 1971? Brad asked. It says, really, Bowert said. Arthur Lee Allen got a ticket in San Francisco on the day one of the Zodiac letters was mailed. Of course, that's the one from Pleasanton. It says, now that a record exists, this is the page I was missing. Now that a record exists of him being in San Francisco in that area at 1:35 p.m. on March 13th, 1971, maybe he's thinking, I'll drive a couple of counties over and mail the letter from there where there is no record of my being. Of course, that's what he presumably did, because, of course, that next Zodiac letter got mailed from Pleasanton, California. Fincher discussed the notion that up to that date, Zodiac had mailed all of his letters except for which had no postmarks from his San Francisco mailbox. The day Lee Allen was ticketed, Zodiac broke his pattern and mailed a letter from Pleasanton 94566, where Lee's critically ill father, Ethan Allen, lay dying in a hospital. Sadly, the father would succumb 3 days later. And put that back up, because that's Arthur Lee Allen's father there. He was a Navy pilot. This guy was decorated Navy pilot. That's him in front of one of his planes, had a long career in the Navy, and then later he becomes a draftsman for the city of Vallejo. So there may have been a light table in Arthur Lee Allen's home. I don't think Arthur Lee Allen could draft, but his father could. So you have to consider the possibility there may have been a drafting table in the Allen home somewhere, as his father was a draftsman, like Cheney was for the city of Vallejo. But Arthur Lee Allen's father had a plane crash where he was pretty messed up. Not critically, of course, but it shook him up pretty bad. It was somewhere in Texas, and after that, he said it was not the same man anymore. He was not as forward as he used to be. He lost his confidence after that plane crash, and I think it wasn't soon after that he retired from the Navy, and then he's back working for the city of Vallejo. But that's Arthur Lee Allen's father there, Ethan Warren Allen, and it talks a lot about him in here and the relationships that he had with his father. It's talking about Ron Allen a lot and the relationship he had with Arthur Lee Allen. So there's a lot of insight here that I never knew. But, I don't think that Graysmith made it all up, especially parts where he's talking about Bowert and some stuff about Toschi, because, people are going to know that it's out there. So he's taking a big risk if he's just going to make up some stuff about a lot of people that are still alive. Ron Allen's still alive. Here's a picture of Ron Allen. That's Ron Allen at the top right. You can see this profile looks a lot like his brother. He didn't look as much like him back in the day. I got a picture of him from the Cal Poly Pomona yearbook. And this one's talking about trying to interview Ron Allen and his wife, Karen Allen. It says Toschi and Armstrong would have to go into Vallejo PD's backyard again to interview the brother and his wife together. Molinax thought Lee Allen was a good suspect, but has done as much as he could. I talked to the brother. He told Toschi as if being insulted. Oh my God, Toski had told him, this is a courtesy call. No matter what any other jurisdiction has done, the murders had been dropped in San Francisco's lap. They couldn't walk away. Too much was at stake. On August 4th, 1971, Toski and Mullinax questioned the sister-in-law who earlier had attempted to induce the suspect's boss to report that Lee Allen needed to be gotten off the streets and into an institution. I never heard where Karen Allen had said that. So I don't know if that's true. It's Graysmith. Take it for what it's worth. Toski and Armstrong had listed the conversation in their police report. The brother and sister-in-law have seen this cipher, Fincher had told Toski. They've seen him with his weird collection, dead chipmunks and squirrels, keeping small animals' organs in the freezers, living in the basement. They get together, and the brother and Cheney are better friends. So they knew that. They get together, and the brother and Cheney are better friends than Lee and Cheney, and Sandy Panzarella and Cheney and the brother are better friends than Sandy Panzarella and Lee are. So they've discussed this and come up with a plan of action, some sort of supporting each other in what it must be a really difficult thing. So when you describe the brother's frustration about Vallejo not doing anything, is there any element of this that is also fear? We have two outbursts from Lee Allen, Fincher continued. One when he's called on the carpet for touching children. He says, I did it. I did it. I can't help myself. I know I've got a problem. And then he loses his job. It's spring, so he's 3/4 of the way through the year. No teacher, no matter how mediocre, loses their job 3/4 of the way through the school year. It doesn't happen. In September 1968, before the Lake Herman Road murders, Lee was fired from Valley Springs. He told his friends it was just politics and moved back in with his parents. But they suspect, Fincher continued, there's something deeply effing wrong with him. He's a pedophile. His world crashes in around his effing head. Now he's got it pretty much under control until next time when the cops come to get him. Until the cops come to get him in the basement, he's covered with squirrel shit and screaming. Now this guy knows he's been finked on by his brother and very likely some acquaintances. The sister-in-law really wanted to talk to big city detectives, Toski recalled. They just thought we'd listen a little more intently, and we did. So Karen and Ron apparently thought Vallejo PD was just a bunch of bumpkin cops that couldn't solve this case, and they thought that SFPD could. Wrong. I think Vallejo had probably had their act together more than SFPD. But the brother never found anything to give me when he searched the basement. I never liked that a civilian had done the search for us. Later, of course, remember, had they asked Ron Allen to search the 32 Fresno house because the first place that the police searched was, of course, the trailer in Santa Rosa. Later, I felt the case was solved when a search of Lee Allen's basement's lair uncovered bombs. Forget bombs, Fincher said. This guy is a convicted felon. You've got 5 handguns. And remember, Arthur Lee Allen was a felon, and he had all these guns in his house that they found during the 32 Fresno search, and they didn't do anything. They did not arrest him for it. He said, I was in disbelief, Toski said. Why didn't they arrest him? He underscored each of the words in the air with his finger. When they told me what they found during the 1991 search of his home, I thought without question that was enough to make an arrest. And they didn't. And maybe you know some of the reasons why, because they didn't want to spend the money. They didn't have enough evidence on Allen. They knew that Allen's death was imminent. Of course, he does die in 92, but he was in really bad shape. We have Mike Nail wanting to be a judge and get a judgeship going. So I think if it weren't for Allen's health and maybe not for Mike Nail having higher ambitions and the politics involved, I think Allen's arrested for the murder of Darlene Ferrin and the attack on Mike Mageau, of course, survived Blue Rock Springs Park. So good background stuff in this book. And there's just much, much more of it. I'm not even like halfway through with it and I have all that. It's just, it's interesting to how these guys were thinking about all this coming together. Cause Fincher just wants to make a good movie, but he's also trying to reassure himself that this is, that Arthur Lee Allen is our guy. And one of the things that they talk about also is that a 22 caliber weapon was used at Lake Herman Road. And a lot of the talk was, why would any professional use a 22? Because it's obviously it killed Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. But they said, why would you take a chance on such a low caliber weapon? And why would a pro use this and that? So they're going through all the little details, trying to reassure themselves. But, you have to remind yourselves that Graysmith wrote this thing. So you have to take it with a little grain of salt. So this, excuse that piece of writing I put in between it. Somebody had written on the message board that Paul Stein's brother, Joe Stein, was actually a Zodiac killer suspect. Now that was a new one. I've heard of Paul Avery and some other outrageous suspects before, but I've never thought of Joe Stein being the Zodiac. And of course, it comes from maybe he did these other murders and then wants to just camouflage killing his own brother for some other reason. And I thought it was kind of interesting in the fact that you could build any suspect you want out of anything. I mean, if you look at the Zodiac Killer sketch versus Joe Stein, it's not bad. Do I think that Joe Stein is a Zodiac? Of course I don't. But it just goes to show you that you could even build a case for Joe Stein if you want. I found an obituary for Paul Stein where it mentions his sister, his mother, and it does not mention Joe in the obit whatsoever. I don't know if that was just someone knew that those guys didn't get along for some reason, or they just forgot to put in his obituary that he had a brother. That's strange. And remember, Joe Stein famously said that, he called Zodiac out. He was a mechanic, I think, in Fresno, and he said, "Hey, Zodiac, come get me. I work at the gas station fixing cars here in Fresno, and come get me." Remember that whole thing? And then he got some news media out of the thing. But just to show you that he's as good as of a match to the Presidio Heights sketch is anybody. And you can make a case for anyone. I mean, it's unfortunate in over 50-year-old case, you can make a case for anyone. But I had not seen that before. I don't know what else would be going for Joe Stein. I don't think Joe Stein probably had the ability to construct the 340. No offense to him, but I don't see it. I just don't. But he does favor the sketch. So you could just come up with some story that he wanted to kill his own brother because he was jealous over something, or maybe I don't know, just whatever you want to come up with is insane. But they're the pictures. Not a bad match at all. Of course, Corky has not been able to weigh in yet. Let's let Corky weigh in. Just make sure I didn't miss any questions. Yes, yes, Lisa. The Zodiac said, I have seen you have stumbled upon my Riverside activity, but a lot of people do not believe that Zodiac was the killer of Sherry Joe Bates. I think it was her boyfriend. We know who that is. I think Bad Hop was the killer of Sherry Joe Bates. I think it was Bad Hop. I hope Bad Hop isn't watching because Bad Hop is still alive. The problem is that Graysmith clearly yes, he did. He clearly made up some things in the past, and we can't know for certain whether or not he made up some of his claim in this book. That's true. I said I agree with that. You can't. That's why I said take it with a grain of salt. I think some of it probably is true, just like the Zodiac book. A lot of what he said was true, but he weaved in a lot of his own narrative. We can never believe. Yeah, we can't, but not everything he said was false. Now we've had a lot of time, not for this book, but for Zodiac to really parse out what was true or not. Like, I don't think the painting party ever happened, but people still talk about it like they know that it happened. I don't think it ever happened. I don't think there was any painting party. I honestly think a lot of the Graysmith lies were given to him by Don Cheney. I honestly do. I think Don Cheney was the goose that laid the golden egg for Graysmith. He was without Cheney, you don't have Allen. Without Allen, you don't have a book. And without the book, you don't have the movie. I think this was Cheney feeding him things like that, including the painting party. Yes, his Riverside activity. I don't remember the year Paul Avery checked out the lead. Of course, that comes from he was tipped off from a letter called the Slow Boat to China letter. That's what tipped off Avery. Then he goes down and investigates that. I did a Delphi show not long ago with Professor Sudduth, but he was having bad audio problems. But he's reviewing my Zodiac paper right now. So when he's done with that, I'm going to have him back on and do a deep Delphi dive. And I promise we'll fix the audio this time because he knows the case better than anyone right now. Ethan Allen is Arthur Lee Allen's father. Ethan Warren Allen was Arthur Lee Allen's brother. Hey, art student. Need a cough button. No, but we will. I will do and I want to do a Missy Beaver show. I want to do a Missy Beaver show with Ned. I know Ned has moved to the Philippines. In case everybody missed Ned's last show, Ned is relocated to the Philippines, where he's engaged, and maybe there's already a couple little Neds running around the Philippines. I don't know, but I want to do it. If you're watching Ned, I want to do a Missy Beaver show, because you're the only other YouTuber I know that I know a couple guys that cover it, but I'd rather do it with Ned, since I know Ned and he knows Missy Beavers pretty well. And I know Ned's going to start doing a lot more live stuff. So whatever time that would be in the Philippines, if it can line up, probably during the day for him and be at night for me. But I want to do a Missy Beaver show with Ned. So hope you're safe down there, Ned, and enjoy the move. Oh, you do? You live an hour away from the Delphi murders happened. My cousin lives about an hour away. My cousin lives in Noblesville, Indiana. I think she's about an hour away from Delphi. The sniper activity before the Zodiac murders, there was some reports of a sniper at Lake Berryessa, and I think it was before the attacks at Lake Berryessa. There was a sniper at Berryessa, and then I don't remember the other one. Was it Gaviota Beach? The Dominguez Edwards? I got to go back and look it up. I'll look it up, Chris. One of them was definitely there was reports of a sniper at Lake Berryessa, not on the day of the murders, which was September 27th, 69, but I'm pretty sure it was months before. There was reports of a sniper at Lake Berryessa, which was interesting, but they never caught him. They obviously never caught him. Oh, interesting. Ned is in where is Ned? I already forgot. Cebu City, CEBU. Really? Is that true, Keith? The Delphi, when did that happen? Yeah, it was the beach also. I didn't see that. The Delphi crime scene photos have leaked. Oof. I don't want to see them. I for one do not want to see them. That's I mean, if that compromises any case against Allen, that's bad. That's really bad. Yeah, I think he does have. It's a weird time. Yeah, it says Ned's doing the stream at 4 a.m. West Coast time. Richard Grinnell joins the chat. It's a good time for him. Yeah, I mean Richard's in England, so it probably lines up better for Richard. That's what I thought. I don't know if I'm doing a show at 4 a.m. though, Ned. 2 weeks ago? I haven't seen that yet, Keith. You have most of them except the bodies. Oh, that is bad. I hope it doesn't. I just hope it doesn't jeopardize a case against Allen. I think Allen's guilty. I think all that, whatever that cult thing is a joke. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Pedro. They No, was not a religion. No way. No way. Those things on the bodies and on the tree, that's a reach. That's ridiculous. It's some cult. I don't buy that for a minute. I don't buy it at all. I don't think a jury would buy it either. That's a good question, Darnell. If I was asked to make the next Zodiac movie, what would it be about? What would the storyline focus on? It'd focus on the friendship between two guys, Darnell. You know who those two guys are? It was focused on how these two guys even had a friendship, uh, grown out of being friends with the guy's brother. Then you become friends with that weirdo, and the time you spent and what you talked about. And it's a lot like the true story, Darnell, of Leopold and Loeb, who set out to commit the perfect murder. I think that's what we have here. I think that Don Cheney and Arthur Lee Allen were a lot like Leopold and Loeb. I don't think they were gay lovers or anything like that. like Leopold and Loeb. I think one was attracted to the other, or something was going on there. But they got these two friends set out to commit the perfect murder. Of course, they got caught. Um, it would be a lot like that story. It would be a lot like Arthur Lee Allen and Don Cheney in a Leopold and Loeb somewhat type situation where they set out to commit the perfect murders. Because if anything I learned through all this, I think Cheney was the mastermind. I think Cheney's a lot smarter than Arthur Lee Allen. I think that there was some weird dynamic between these two guys. I don't know at what point that the threats come in, or blackmail, or how much Allen knows of the whole situation, but that's what I think is going on here. If you can completely figure out the relationship between Cheney and Allen, this case is solved. It's like I don't even like entertaining other suspects anymore because there's just nothing there. I mean, there isn't. This is a Cheney-Allen crime, in my opinion. It is. There's some other compelling suspects. I think Doer was kind of interesting, or I've said that. Some others are okay, but this is Allen and Cheney. There's so much. There's just a ridiculous amount of circumstantial evidence for Arthur Lee Allen. And all that gets to go to Cheney, because he knows all this. He knows he misspelled words. He knows he's got a Zodiac wristwatch. He knows about the cars he has access to. He knows that he uses different phrases, like Christmas with two S's. He knows that he shortened some words, like Karen Allen knew, because that's why there's so much for Allen, because Cheney's just not going to randomly accuse his friend for revenge, and it's just as luck would have it, his friend has more circumstantial evidence going for him than any other suspect in this major crime, serial killer in over 50 years. That just doesn't happen. If it's just he's mad at the guy, he's just going to be looked at, and then they're going to move on. Like, okay, he lived in Vallejo. Okay, that's interesting, but what else do we have? Well, how about the fact he was questioned just days after the third murder at Lake Berryessa by Detective John Lynch? And they also talk about that in the book. I'd focus a lot on that. And I wish I could go back and I screenshotted the page where it talks about John Lynch. And, the story goes, he just could not remember. According to Lynch, he could not remember why he questioned Arthur Lee Allen. They didn't question like hundreds of dudes in Vallejo. They didn't. And Allen's one of the few that they did. I mean, really? I mean, Allen draws this map, and they talk about it in the book as well, Shooting Zodiac, where Allen draws this detailed map of Lake Berryessa. He tells another friend that he was going to be at Berryessa that day. And another thing that they hone in on the book, going back to that, is where Brian Hartnell was apparently was going to, he told the Zodiac, hey, stab me first or do me first or something like that, because I'm too chicken, knowing that Cecilia's being stabbed him and he wants to go out first, like, because either bravely or not, he said, because he when he retells that, he says because he was chicken. And then later Arthur Lee Allen claims, I had two dead chickens in my car that I stabbed with a bloody knife that was in my car that day, that I was going to go to Lake Berryessa. So they were equating to that. Were the two chickens you were talking about, Brian and Cecilia? That's kind of an interesting little side note from the book. But that's what it'd be about, Darnell. It'd be about the dynamic between these two guys and how they came up. Thanks, Big B Art. That was a good question, Darnell. I definitely want to do the Missy Beavers case with Ned, because I think Ned's doing a lot more content now. I think he's probably got more time to do YouTube now that he's in the Philippines. He's probably working, probably doing computer work, I would assume. Art Bell lived in the Philippines a long time, right, Keith? Art Bell lived there in the Philippines when he got remarried, and then he moved back to Pahrump. I guess he never sold his property. I guess he kept his Pahrump property when he moved back. I think he moved back twice, didn't he? Went over to the Philippines, and then he got married and moved back to Pahrump. And then I thought he went back for a little while longer, and then came back to Pahrump in Nevada when he passed away. You do a show one time. Maybe we'll do that, Keith. We should do a show all about Art Bell. I mean, Art Bell, not just being a legend, but man, a lot of interesting things happen to Art Bell. I do have a friend that knew Art really well. It seemed like he liked it over there, but I'm going to make a prediction that Ned moves back. Yeah, we need to do that. We need to do Zodiac too, though. Maybe we'll do both. We'll do a little Art Bell and a little Zodiac. Well, my prediction is Ned will be back with his bride at some point, and a couple little Neds in tow. They're gonna be back. They're gonna be back in West Virginia. He's gonna say, "I know you like to be close," because the Filipino people are very family oriented. And I know a guy that married a Filipino bride, but they're in the United States. But I know they're very family oriented and they don't like to leave their family. That is needed, isn't it, Patty? All about Art Bell. Somebody told me some real. Who was that told me a lot of stuff that people didn't really know about Art Bell? Was who's the guy? The guy in Korea, the guy that has a talk show in Korea. Shoot, what's his name? Okay, definitely. The guy in Korea knew a lot about Art Bell. I don't think he knew Art Bell, but he knew a lot about Art Bell that I didn't know. So I thought that was interesting. So we definitely need to do nothing bad about him, but it was just kind of interesting stuff that was going on. Lake Berryessa Killer had all the indicators of being a sexual psychopath. I've heard somebody trying to make that argument too. Sexual psychopathy is not evident in the other three canonical crimes. You do think the Lake Berryessa Killer was a serial killer, but not for Z crimes. Yeah, a lot of people think that Lake Berryessa was a copycat crime. It's just weird that if it was, because obviously it's deviating because it's a knife attack by knife, of course, as he wrote. Of course, he claimed the other two crimes on the car door, never claimed it in a letter. Lake Berryessa was never, ever claimed by Zodiac in a written letter. It's only claimed on Brian Hartnell's car door. But a lot of people always think that that's a copycat crime for whatever reason. But if it is, what was the point of the cross circle on the outfit? If it's a copycat crime, did they just take the symbol from the letters in the newspapers and just go with it? And then they come up with this executioner outfit with the cross circle logo, borrowing that for two people that you plan to kill. I mean, Brian Hartnell thought he was going to die. He probably should have died. He may have bled out if Dennis Land doesn't find him. They also mentioned Dennis Land in Shooting Zodiac, which I thought was interesting because there's not a whole lot about Land. Apparently, they did talk to him, and I don't think I saw anything where in the book where he gave talked much about it. They just said he was a real slow talker talking about Dennis Land. So I don't know if that described what Brian Hartnell heard at Berryessa. Of course, in the hoax theory, it's surmised that Dennis Land was the attacker at Lake Berryessa. But if Lake Berryessa is a copycat, why the cross circle for people you're going to kill? That's just what I don't understand. Yeah, the pirate guy. Yes. Good memory, the pirate guy. Jaffe. I'll have to ask. Remind me to ask Jaffe about Art Bell because he knew a lot of inside Art Bell stuff somehow, some way, and I don't know how, but he did, and it looked, but I don't know if it's true or not. W6BBO Art's ham radio call sign. Yeah, Art was really into that. It does to me too. I think that's what Sherwood Morrell did thought too. That the car writing. Oh, did I even say what my backdrop was? That's a payphone at Tuolumne and Springs. The payphone that Zodiac made the phone call from after the Blue Rock Springs murder. I didn't even say anything about it. You're like, what is that background? That's the inside of the phone booth at Tuolumne and Springs. Of course, the phone booth is long gone. There's like a little office there now. I've got a picture of it when I visited there. Yeah, Aaron Stoner does a lot. Aaron Stoner, yes, he is. The thing about Aaron though is he came up with a Missy Beavers suspect who he just grabbed out of thin air. I don't know why he did it because he's an expert on the Missy Beavers case, but his suspect, and even Ned did a show about it, I think, or at least part of a show about how he just picked this guy out of nowhere based off of images from when they think the killer drove into the Southwest Sports gun store parking lot, and there had surveillance cameras on the gun store, and this guy's seen driving, I think it was a Mazda, a car, and Aaron kind of like really played with the photo enhancement software and came up with what he thinks that Missy Beaver's attacker looks like. Well, first of all, you have to make the assumption that the guy that drove through the parking lot at the sporting goods store that was just down from the church where Missy was murdered is her killer, which I think it is. So I'll go with him there. But there's no way you're going to get a good enough image because this is great. Pretty, they're good cameras, but it's a rainy night out in the middle of the parking lot. And you're going to get a good enough picture from that to find a suspect. And he was literally just looking at pictures of convicted felons in Texas and came up with the suspect. Nothing else at all for the guy. So I'm like, man, I don't know, dude. That's kind of coming up there a little bit. Art's last video on YouTube, he's flying a drone cam over his Pahrump home back into his hand. Wow. He died soon after. Yes, please do an Art Bell show. Yeah, we're a lot of Art Bell fans here. Keith was telling me about the Art Bell AI on YouTube, that there's some AI Art Bell stuff. So I'll put that out there. Yes, Lisa Paul Averly. Lisa, guess who went to junior college with Don Cheney in 1952? Do you know the answer? Who went to Bakersfield Junior College in 1952 and was director of student assemblies? A tiny little junior college that had to share a campus with Bakersfield High School. It was so little, where there was 200 male students. Think Don Cheney and Paul Avery didn't cross paths then? You bet they did. It's funny, Don Cheney never brought that up to anybody. Never told anybody two things. Never said that, hey, I went to a little junior college in Bakersfield in 1952 with the guy that's doing all the Zodiac reporting. He never bothered to mention that to anybody. Here's a guy that loves attention. He didn't want anyone to know that little fact. Isn't that interesting? He also never bothered to tell anybody he was in the Air Force. I guess no one cared. Yes, the old Art Bell is the original. The best Art Bell is what's your favorite, Patty? I'm gonna guess. Mel's Hole. Mel's Hole, Bugs, the Area 51. The Area 51 was great, where the guy's flying the plane into Area 51 and he calls Art on the show where he's flying into the Area 51 airspace. I'd say Mel Hole's the best. I don't know. Mel's Hole's just a great story. When they throw the dead dog down Mel's Hole and the dog jumps back up alive, you can't beat that. It's just the best. And then I guess Bugs was the guy that claimed he shot a Bigfoot and he was worried he was going to get arrested. So he kept the Bigfoot somewhere. I don't know if he buried him or whatever. Yes, Mel's Hole. Thank you, Lisa. You never know, Darnell. I really would like to do a Ted Braden documentary. Well, I was approached by Peacock, but it was about Horn stuff. Of course, Horn's the one that got me involved in that. So I'm forever in Professor Horn's debt for getting me the gig at Peacock with the Myth of the Zodiac Killer. That was a really great crew. And I was really happy the way that show turned out. I mean, we had done a lot more kind of Cheney-centric stuff that I thought they were going to get to. We just didn't have time, and they were going to try to work it into, but there's so much footage to edit through. Maybe they could do a third one because I know I'd get a lot more footage for Peacock for that, especially when I went to St. Louis. We were filming in a warehouse there, a really creepy warehouse, beautiful shot. I think only a little bit of that actually got into it. Most of it were I'm wearing the sport coat. That was all done in Benicia in a house they rented there, not far from Lake Herman Road. But then we filmed a lot in St. Louis at this old beer warehouse somewhere, really creepy warehouse. They actually run a haunted house out of part of it, and it's perfect for that. Beautiful shot. I'll put it up here next time. I'll put a couple of pictures from the setup we had in St. Louis, but it was really cool. And I did a lot of Cheney stuff there that never made it. Buried 2 Bigfoots and sent the map to Art. Oh, okay, it was 2 of them. Didn't he let her? I mean, later they try to add him as a fraud, though. They said Bugs was a liar, but I refuse to believe it. If he was on Art Bell, it happened. And one thing about Art, I mean, Art was a stickler too. If you ever called in and let's say if you called on the west of the Rockies line and you called and then you said what city you were in and you were not west of the Rockies, he'd know it immediately and kick you off. I mean, it's like, what if you called the wrong line and you sit there and waited an hour? I mean, just to get on, because back then it took a while. Everybody wanted to get on. Of course, Art doesn't never screen his calls like George Norrie does. I never been on with Art. Keith, I know you did with his other show after Coast to Coast, but Art didn't screen. You called, you got in, you were on with Art. And so many people didn't get that. Like, oh, can I talk to Art, Bill? And they'd start messing with him, because they wouldn't realize they're already talking to Art. But if you called in and you called on the west of the Rockies line and you were in some city that was not west of the Rockies, he knew it immediately. He would throw you off. I love that about Art. Art was a stickler. You got to call on the right phone, or he didn't care. Like, even if you did, oh yeah, he hated if you left your radio on. Can you please extinguish your radio? Art hated that. Yeah, man, it was that just made the open lines were so much better when they were so much more organic. I mean, I've been on with George. Of course, I did Ghost to Ghost. But I told a great UFO story on George's show as the first caller. But I guess it was Tommy that you have to say it to first. I guess it was Tommy screaming the calls. You have to tell the entire story to Tommy before you get to tell it to George. So you lose a lot of the magic or whatever your story is going to be after you tell the screener. I think it was Tommy mostly. A 10-minute story, and then he's deciding if you're going to get on or not. But then, okay, that's good enough. Okay, we're going to put you on hold, and then you're going to retell it when George comes on. But you already start screwing it up after that because you already had to say the whole thing to Tommy, and you're nervous. And then they'll say again, west of the Rockies, you're on the air, and you don't know that it's you because they don't say, "Hey, Drew, you're up next." You're just supposed to know it's you, and that's why everybody always says, "Am I on the air? I'm on," and you don't know you're on the air until George starts answering back to you. You have no idea that you're on. That's why you don't know that until you're actually a caller to the show, where they just say, you forget, you don't, because you're listening when you're on the phone after you call in, they're piping the show through your phone. So you're listening to the show as you're waiting. So you have no idea when you're up next or not. That's why they always say, "I'm on the air. I'm on the air," like a total idiot, because you really don't know until George talks back to you. It's just a little inside information for Coast to Coast. What's PI, Pedro? I don't want to go there because I'm white. I don't have a couple bucks though. That rules me out. They're not gonna rob me, dang it. That's cool. Bob Lazar was in my daughter's favorite show that I've ever done on YouTube. Is called How Bizarre is Bob Lazar, or UFOs Real and What Really Happened at Area 51. My daughter has memorized that entire show that I did 4 years ago on YouTube. It's so terribly done, but she loves it with the aliens. She's memorized that entire show. It's her favorite video on YouTube, even above Taylor Swift. You think Bob Lazar was interviewed right after he was discovered by George Knapp? Yes. Yeah. Definitely. That was George Knapp. That's how he started getting on Coast to Coast. And of course, David Politis. And for God's sake, anybody that ever covers any missing people, missing 411, it's Politis, not Polites or Politis. It's Politis. Oh my God. I've seen so many YouTubers that have 100,000 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers, 1,000,000 subscribers, and they barbecue the man's name. It's Politis. Politis. For God's sake, get his name right. I can't believe these people have successful YouTube channels. I mean, David Politis is the one that brought forward all the whole missing 411 phenomenon, people going missing in national parks. I know some people don't like him, but for God's sake, get his name right. It's Politis. That's my soapbox. Yeah, we definitely have to do some Art Bell. I wonder what happened to Art Bell Jr. I know he has, I think he had 3 kids. Well, ALA did have dozens and dozens. He has like one the A tier list of circumstantial evidence. Then he has a B and C tier list of circumstantial evidence that I would put up against anybody. especially in a case where the physical evidence was horrifically stored, and especially in the case of San Francisco Police Department. I mean, it's a joke how they stored all that stuff. Uh, Cops were taking the letters home and letting their kids handle them. Hey, son, this Zodiac wrote that. What do you think, Buster? Literally taking the stuff home and letting their family handle it with their bare hands. You're going to trust the DNA from that stuff? Come on. No way. Total crap. All of it. The bindings from Lake Berryessa. There's pictures of all the police people in Napa barehanding all the ties. They're worthless. They're just barehanded over and over. Of course, they didn't know that DNA was going to come up one day, but still, all that stuff was barehanded over and over. The San Francisco crime lab was a joke then. Probably they're a joke now, but back then they were really a joke. I mean, for big cities, they were ranked last in solving murders. That's how bad they were, and that's the evidence you're gonna trust DNA off of? No way. Nothing on Gary, Mark. Man, I wish Gary would turn up. You remember that story where the guy put on the Charlie Project that he found Gary Mathias and I don't know, it's like a homeless guy somewhere, and that he didn't know what to do with the information. And that was I mean, I think the guy was a hoaxer. Of course, everybody assumes the guy's just making it up or he's mistaken. But he said that Gary was alive. But that's just a weird place to do it on the Charlie Project, where you have to sign up to even be in the chat group. I mean, not that there's any heavy screening. I'm not claiming that, but you had to at least, this is one wasn't just an anonymous Reddit post. It was on the Charlie Project, which is all about missing people, blah, blah, blah. And the dude said that Gary was out there and that he knew it, but he didn't know who to tell. And I wrote back immediately because, when somebody writes on that board on the Yuba County 5, it would give me an update. So I responded and logged in and responded immediately. I know his sister. Here's my phone number. I mean, within an hour, the dude posted that. Of course, he never called. I'm like, dang, we thought we found Gary. I mean, if anybody could have gotten out of those woods, it's Gary Mathias. I mean, and it's just different ways I'm thinking about this whole case now. Of course, it's no secret, Yuba County 5, I think Joe Shones is involved. I think Joe Shones' wife is involved, and somebody else that knew Joe Shones, I think, is involved. I think they just saw them out in Chico, and they just saw an easy target for whatever the reason was, money or jerk them around. I don't know. But Shones definitely is involved in this. He knows what happened. Of course, Shones is dead. Somebody that may have been there, in my opinion, is still alive, and hopefully that individual is questioned. But sometimes I think that the boys were not made to flee up that mountain. Sometimes I think they were actually taken to the trailers. And I'm also suspect of the motorcyclist. And I'm talking about this a lot, with Tony. My buddy Keith really wants to know exactly where the trailers were, because they were not directly in the Daniels Inc. campground. They were close to it in the Granite Basin Fire Camp. And if you read the articles from that time, there was deadfall everywhere. It's just like, I don't know how motorcycle riders just casually roll up on where these trailers were that they found Ted Weir's body in. I mean, it's just like one in a million. And it was also one of a million that the boys could have found those trailers after fleeing through the mountains, and they find the trailers. That's a 1 in a million too. 1 in a million boys find them. 1 in a million the motorcycle riders find those trailers. I mean, they were in the middle of nowhere with all the roads blocked from the deadfall. Like, how do street bikes find the trailers? Of course, that's a topic for another show. Well, I guess that's a trick, Pedro. I don't have any money on you, and maybe they won't take you. Somebody else said that. Who else used to say that? Where has he been lately? What was the guy, Patty, that talked about the writing on the car door being done at two different times? Writing on Hartnell's car door appears to you to have been written before the crime, with only 630 a knife written after. That's interesting. Who's the other guy that said something similar to this? The rest is written straight line, but those two words slant. Yeah, there's slant hastily written. Yeah, they talk about if he had to like bear himself on the car door when he wrote on it with some kind of marker. Of course, they didn't have Sharpies back then. Maybe I guess they had marks a lot. But somebody, who's the guy that used to? I haven't seen him in a while. Maybe it's you and you changed your name. Plate C. Thank you. Maybe no name indicated as Plate C. See, your memory's good, Patty. Mine's total crap. Yes, Joel, it's true. Zodiac referred to. I also did those two up in the North Bay in the Stein letter. Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. He knew that he was familiar enough with the city of San Francisco. Whoever you think Zodiac was knew the city of San Francisco fairly well. I mean, it wasn't just somebody that was out in Vallejo that may have gone in once in a while. It's somebody that knew it fairly well. Of course, Cheney lived in the city for at least 2 years on Day Street. So I think he was pretty familiar with San Francisco. I think that is it for tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Be back next week. Going to do 8 o'clock again, just a better time. Everybody have a great week. Thanks for tuning in again.